So Phil, on this series of 4 videocasts for the Globe Mail, what we're looking at is the role of the manager and kind of the typical life of a manager's career these days. So we started off last time looking at going from superstar to manager. This time we're going to be looking at going from manager to leader. And next time we'll look at going from manager to C-suite for those who make it up to that level. And finally, something I see among my boomer friends, going from manager to retiring and becoming an entrepreneur. So maybe starting a website or opening up a second cup somewhere or bed and breakfast in Victoria, this sort of thing. But this one we're looking at now, this idea of going from a manager to a leader. And my starting point is that these days, in a globalized world, a tough economy out there, a challenging economy, one that really needs a lot of innovation, more than 10 or 20 years ago when I started out, what we're looking at is that we need more leadership in organizations. Now, our colleague, Henry Mintzberg, is often railed against superstar CEOs, which Fortune loves to put on their cover and Business Week and so on. And it sells a lot of magazines, I guess, but it seems like one person. So Henry talks about Lou Gerstner, an article a few years ago in Fortune where Fortune said that Lou Gerstner added $40 billion, I think was the amount, to IBM's share price in 4 years. And it seems like it was just Lou himself. I think Lou would be the first to say it wasn't just me, it was a team effort. So I think everybody these days needs to be leader, not just the few at the top.
Certainly this is true. Even from my own experience, I remember as a young fellow, you'd be reading these magazines and you'd think, oh, that's what I want to be like, that's who I want to be. And when you first become a manager, you get so involved in just all the details and everything like that, that you're just sort of turning the crank and getting going. And then you're starting to think, how am I going to move forward? How am I going to get out of this mode and get to the next level? And I remember for me personally, the big change came when I first internalized this idea that even me, the middle manager, could actually do a change. I could come out there and I could say, what should be improved? How do I want to improve this? And it's when I started doing that and taking this initiative on my own and not feeling like I have to be the CEO before I can get there, that's when things really started moving for myself in my career as I move forward.
So it kind of clicked in your mind that you could be a leader as well. It just wasn't the people upstairs that you had to wait for.
That's it.
It's interesting as you think about one of the starting points is what's the difference between a manager and a leader? And we think of what a manager and a leader is that a manager makes things go more efficiently and runs the processes, but doesn't change things. Where to my mind, a leader is someone who changes and takes the organization to a better future, to a better place. And so that's central to my mind. It's about change. The fact is today we need more change. You know, as we talked about globalization and the need for innovation, to me the central point of leadership is about taking us to a better future. And that can be done by a secretary organizing their boss's schedule more effectively. It can be done by a customer service rep who's saying, let's change this process so that we can serve our clients better. So it's not just the big changes from the top, but it's a thousand small changes that come throughout an organization that we need today. To my mind, that's what leadership's about.
Absolutely. I remember from my own experience again, when I was there, the manager, and I'm looking around, how can I go and change something? I personally picked this idea that I was going to work with my people who worked for me, and I was going to improve them. I was going to make them leaders. And that was my personal effort at changing, and that, of course, resulted in all sorts of spin-off changes. So certainly, wherever you are in the organization, you can go and see something around you that you'd like to improve, make better with yourself, with your people, with the processes, and make it happen. Try it.
Absolutely. When we think about leadership, we tend to think about the charismatic person that kind of sucks the oxygen out of the room, the Bill Clintons of the world.
Right.
And they certainly are great leaders. An Obama, an inspiring leader, may well be president. But what we're looking at, I think, is that leadership is also the quiet conviction. The leader who is authentic and we believe him or her is absolutely convincing, not because of the noise they make, but because the fact is that they have strength of convictions and they have evidence, they have reality on their side. And so it's something that really gets people to say, I believe in what they're talking about and what they're saying. And they also engage people in the process rather than coming down like Moses with the 10 Commandments from the mountaintop. But it's something where it's this kind of engaging management and leadership, which really marks someone, I think, as a leader rather than merely someone who makes a lot of noise and is charismatic, though that kind of leadership is very useful as well. I think we're seeing a greater variety in the leadership style, and we see it's not just about that kind, but it's a wide variety of people can be leaders these days.
Right. As I first became a manager, I would look around at my peers and I would sort of identify who would I like to be like? Well, who can I learn from? And of course, at first, the first thing you see is he who is the loudest, who's the most vocal, the most forceful, seems to always take charge. Say, that's the leader. I should try to change and become like that person. And it's only later on that I started to realize that, in fact, it's not, leadership isn't a personality trait. I can be a leader even though perhaps I'm quiet, so long as I have an idea and I want to move forward and I want to change and I want to improve the team, the organization, the product, so on and so forth.
Absolutely. So Phil, when we think about it, we look at management and leadership. You can look at the first type of change is that a business model change, more a strategic change. The second part is changing your processes, and the third is just efficiency of running your process as well, which is management effectively. So the first is really the most about leadership, is more substantive change in our business model, new customers we're going after, new products, new approaches. So that's the most important, I think, leadership. The second part is a process improvement, where what you're doing is you're still going after the same customers, but you're substantially changing the way we do that. And that's a combination of leadership and management. And the third is just running the processes efficiently, and that's management. That's not change, it's about doing what we're doing it well. And that's really very important when your business model is working, that's central to what managers have to do. But in times of change, times of saying we need new products, new approaches, it calls for more leadership, and that's where the other two really kick in. But it's interesting, the middle one about process improvement is really a matter of a mixture of leadership and management, and that's probably where the vast majority of managers are going to be in that area. But I think over time you can get more into the leadership, where you look at how do we innovate, how do we do things differently around here.
It's very interesting because that model that you've given, those sort of categories, will be very useful even for me. I've got this fellow who worked for me for several years, quiet fellow, and he's looking for how do I grow and become a leader more. Certainly, Carl, I like the idea of looking at this in these different categories. You know, in my own experience, I've got this fellow who's my right-hand man, and he tends to be, he's a quiet type, but he's really smart. He's got a lot of common sense, and he knows how to get things done. And he'll ask me, Phil, how can I, what can I do to get going, to move in my career, to become more of a leader? And I sort of tell him that, well, certainly, you don't have to become loud and vocal. That's not who you are. But if you think of things that you can change, think of things that you can improve, look at the processes that we're using, see how you can improve them, then by all means, that's where that's what you can do, and that's where you can start to improve and just take that initiative and move forward. So this idea of having these categories is great because it gives managers something to look for and how they can get going and move forward in their careers.
So Phil, I think you make a great point there, and it's encouraging to young managers to realize that they can be leaders too today, not having to wait for the 15 to 20 years from now when they might be more senior executives. So this has been Carl and Phil talking management, or today talking leadership, for the Globe and Mail.